I call to order the resumption of the June 17th, 2020 meeting of the Morris Township Committee. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I have a motion for the approval of the May 20th, 2020 minutes and the minutes of our special meeting of June 5th?
So moved.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Okay, Mr. Arvanites,
Yes.
Mr. Jarfi,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso, Mr. Mancuso. You got to mute. There you go. Mr. Mancuso?
Can you hear me?
Yes, now
Yes.
I can.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Mr. Grizel,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes. Thank you. Next up, we have a proclamation, and before getting to that, I just want to welcome everyone from the public who's joining us on Zoom. For the record, this is our third meeting via Zoom, and we are at the section of the meeting where we typically do our recognition of individuals and groups for their service to our community, and we also do recognitions, swearing in, promotions of employees, particularly from our police department and our fire department. I did want to say that those have been postponed while we're carrying out our meetings remotely, and we are hoping to resume in-person meetings in July. That's yet to be finalized, but we are hopeful that we will be able to do that. And when we are able to meet again in person, we will be honoring and recognizing the residents that we have missed in the meantime. And we will also be having a special meeting on June 29th to recognize several members of our fire department who are being sworn in and promoted, and we have one retirement as well. So just putting that out ahead of time. That's typically done during this portion of the meeting. This evening we have a proclamation, Pride Month proclamation. I would like to read it into the record so that everyone knows what our proclamation is and what we are supporting. Whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Morris embraces diversity in our community and encourages inclusiveness from all who live and work in our town, and whereas celebrating Pride Month raises awareness and provides support and advocacy for the LGBTQ community and is an opportunity to become educated, engage in dialogue, strengthen alliances, and build understanding. And whereas while there has been remarkable progress towards acceptance and equality, members of the LGBTQ community continue to face discrimination, intolerance, and hate. And whereas the Morris Township Committee supports an end to all forms of prejudice and discrimination, and whereas all people, regardless of age, gender identity, race, color, religion, marital status, national origin, sexual orientation, or physical challenges have the right to be treated on the basis of their intrinsic value as human beings. And whereas in 2015, the Supreme Court of the United States affirmed the fundamental right to marry is guaranteed to same-sex couples, and whereas this week, the Supreme Court of the United States made one of the most consequential decisions on workplace discrimination in ruling that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 protects LGBTQ individuals. And whereas we must commit to supporting and accepting LGBTQ individuals, in particular our youth, who compared to their peers are far more likely to experience violence and bullying at school, to suffer from depression, and to struggle with substance abuse, and to have attempted suicide. And whereas we must remain vigilant against continued oppression and discrimination against the LGBTQ community, and whereas by protecting the rights of every individual, we enhance and strengthen the value of everyone throughout our entire society. And whereas the Morris Township Committee urges all residents to respect and honor our diverse community and celebrate and build a culture of inclusiveness and acceptance. And whereas we affirm our support for LGBTQ residents in our community and stand with them to protect their civil rights and their ability to live openly and without fear. And therefore, the Township Committee of the Township of Morris recognizes and proclaims the month of June 2020 as Pride Month. And we celebrate and support the LGBTQ community's right to live their lives with visibility, equality, and dignity during this month and every month. And this proclamation is signed by all 5 members of the Morris Township Committee. This is a positive contribution to our community, and I'm very glad that we've taken this action. Is there anyone from the Township Committee who would like to make any comment on this?
Mayor, I'd just like to thank, as chair of the legislation committee who reviewed this, I'd like to thank the committee members for submitting their thoughts and feedback on this proclamation and allowing us to move forward with it.
Thank you. And Committeeman Jorfi, I'd like to especially thank you for your contribution. You really handled a huge amount of the work that went into this. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mark.
I'd just like to add, again, as Mayor Wilson said, I'm very happy that we are proclaiming this and very proud of our efforts on inclusiveness in the community, something that we're seeing in the streets today, but we need a more inclusive society, and this is one step towards that.
Good work, Mark. We're proud of you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, I'd like to open it to public comment and inquiry. If there's anyone from the public who would like to make any comments or ask any questions, please raise your hand if you can. I see a couple raised here, and I will call on them. We ask that you say your name and address and limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. And with that, I'm going to call H&S Ross, which wait.
There you go.
There you go. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Wonderful. I thank you for the proclamation. I think it's great, really great. I'm very happy to hear the total commitment from the Township Committee. And the only thing I would say other than that is to publish it through the municipal messenger.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
so that's all I got on that.
that's all you've got.
On that,
Okay.
I'll be back later.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else, Mark? Yes. Where'd you go?
Okay, next up is John Paul Parmigiani.
Hi, thank you so much for this today. As I'm based at 37 Rolling Hill Drive in Morris Township, and I'm also from Morris Township originally, and grew up here as an LGBTQ youth. It was a very mixed experience, and I can understand that for those of us who really love Morris Township, we think this is a step in the right direction, and we want to make sure that future generations have increasingly more support and just normalize how people are treated. And so we thank everyone for their efforts here in doing so.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your comments. We appreciate your contributions. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to comment?
Not at this time.
Okay, with that, we will close the public comment and move on to ordinances for public hearing and final consideration. Mr.
Thank you,
Carlson?
Madam Mayor. Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have tonight ordinance 15-20. This is an ordinance amending chapter 447, amending, quote, pool municipal rules and regulations, in particular, replacing section 447-5 entitled membership fees, A through K. I will note that this ordinance revises swim pool membership fees by creating a prorated formula for seasonal fees due to the operating restrictions from the COVID-19 pandemic. This is on for public hearing and final consideration.
I'll offer the ordinance for final hearing.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. For the benefit of the public, this ordinance was passed on first read at our special meeting on, I believe that was June 5th. And this ordinance does create a prorated schedule for our swim pool fees. So if there's anyone from the public that would like to ask any questions or make any comments, please raise your hand. And I see Remo Caputo. I will call on Mr. Caputo.
Mayor, I apologize, but I had raised my hand during the public section, but it was not recognized during the public session. And I had something to say, and you closed the meeting before recognizing my raised hand. Can you?
Yes, I did not see it. How about we do this?
Mayor,
Can we
Mayor,
make-
if I may, given the unusual circumstances, perhaps we should recognize Mayor Caputo, even if somewhat out of order. I'm Mayor Caputo, listen to me, Mr. Caputo. Even if somewhat out of order, and we will return to hearing on the ordinance thereafter.
Okay.
I appreciate that. It's very short. I had, like I said, I pressed the raised hand button. Nothing happened. But anyway.
I didn't see it. Sorry about that.
It's just really quick. It has to do with the Abbey, and I just have two comments. One is that I just want to remind the committee that at the last meeting they committed to notifying everyone. Well, not everyone, but neighbors within 200 feet and possibly, quote, beyond prior to the public hearing. And I would, just remind them that that was a commitment made and we would like that to occur. And the second thing is, and just kind of to, again, tell you that the position of all of those of us who have been involved with this matter on the Abbey, we are looking forward to the July 21st meeting. However, should it come to pass that the July 21st meeting is not going to be totally open to the public, then we're going to be asking at the next meeting, at the July, I think it's the 15th meeting, for it to be postponed further until there can be 100% participation. So I just wanted to put you on notice on that, though I think that you probably already knew.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to come in on the July 15th meeting and say, oh, we want to postpone the 21st meeting and catch you all by surprise. If it's going to be a fully open meeting, we're looking forward to the 21st. If it's not going to be 100% participation, then, we need to be thinking about moving it to a further date. That's all I have, and I do appreciate your taking the time to listen to me even out of order.
Sure, thank you. We're sorry about the confusion on that. Yes, Mr. Quinn or Mr. Carlson, can you confirm that letters to people who live within 200 feet will be sent prior to the public hearing on July 21st?
Well, yes, but that's, the point I'd like to make here is that, to date, my counsel to the various communities that I represent, the various boards, has been that we should do as much business as we can in this online, virtual, and normally a Zoom format. But we're reaching a point now that if I don't know whose phone is ringing, but if that could be stopped, that'd be great. Thank you. We're reaching a point that if we're unable to meet again in public for the balance of the summer, we're going to need to start. I don't want to say that we certainly will, but we're going to need to start considering whether or not to start having some of these larger, more contentious, more publicly involved meetings in an online format, because it's not. While personally, I'll tell you, I'm hoping that we're all back in an in-person format come this July. It's not out of the question that we're doing this for the rest of the year. And it gets to the point where eventually we are no longer honoring people's and property owners' rights under the law. So this is something that I just want to alert the public as well as the committee. It's something that's kind of in flux right now. I can offer very little direction as to where we're going, because obviously we're doing everything day by day at this point. But to Mr. Caputo's question, I can't promise that I will rule out advising that we proceed with this issue on a virtual format. That said, it will be by far my preference to avoid that.
I have a couple of comments here. First of all, I don't know what's going on, but you're kind of going in and out, so I missed certain chunks of what you said. But I will say, just for the record, that my strong personal preference, as I've stated before, is that we conduct this meeting in person, and that anyone who wishes to be there in person is able to be. Part of the problem that we have here is that we do not, we're anticipating a large number of people would like to attend, and with social distancing, it's likely that we will, there's a good chance that we will have to get another venue than our town hall meeting room. So there are many uncertainties on that as far as what the limits on the number of people, what the guidelines will be at that time. But my strong preference is that we do it in person. And it's also, believe me, we understand well the importance of the public knowing ahead of time, sufficiently ahead of time, to be able to plan. So we are trying to juggle all these things and work it to the benefit of all of us.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Committeeman Mancuso.
No, just wanted to get back to ordinance number 1520.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so we'll jump back to 1520, and we have already introduced the ordinance, and the motion has been put forth and seconded. So we are now ready at this point for public comment or questions on this ordinance. Is there anyone from the public who would like to ask a question or make a comment on this ordinance? I see MCOS.
Yes.
Mr. Daly?
Yes. They can proceed.
MCOS, can you hear me?
There you go.
No, my question has to do, my remark has to do with the Abbey.
Okay, wait. We're
No. We're in the middle of an ordinance.
You
Yeah,
asked me,
have it
you
come
asked
later.
me to, you asked me to unmute.
Yes. What happened was we had a little confusion with ending the public commentary. Mr. Puto's hand mechanism didn't work, so
Same
we
here.
jumped back.
Okay.
How about, my suggestion is we finish the ordinance and then come back.
Kathy, in 10 minutes, we'll have another public
How's
session,
that?
so why not go down
So
that road?
we are, is is this Ann?
Yes, it is.
Okay. We're in the middle of the ordinance right now, the public hearing on the ordinance. So I want to finish that and then back to you. Okay.
Okay.
So do you have a comment on the ordinance that we're having a public hearing on right now, on the pool ordinance? No?
No.
Okay.
Okay. In that case, is there anyone from the Township Committee who has a comment on the pool? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Arvanites,
Yes.
Mr. Jarfi,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mr. Pretzel,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes. I, Catherine Wilson, Mayor, declare the ordinance adopted and finally passed, approve the same, and direct that the clerk publish the proper notice thereof in the newspaper and to record the ordinance in the proper place. Okay, gonna come back. All right, I guess we'll move on here.
Are you gonna-
It's
are you
been a
reo-
little confusing here.
Are you
The person, no one is showing up on my screen as wishing to speak.
We have another public hearing,
So,
public comment section shortly, so.
okay, we will have a second public comment section
Won't be
before
long.
the end of the meeting. All right, moving on. Bid report, Ms.
The ordinance introduction, please.
Ordinance introduction, 1620.
Sorry, didn't,
I
okay.
apologize. I'm sitting here as
Ordinance for
frustrated as.
introduction.
I apologize, Mayor, if I may, I
Mr.
apologize.
Carlson, are you
Yeah.
there?
I apologize. I've been jumping in here and I feel like everyone's ignoring me only to find out that I'm muted. So that would explain that. Apologies. We have an
ahead.
ordinance for introduction number 16-20, amending chapter 460, section 14, towing and storage charges.
I'll offer the ordinance.
I'll-
Thank you. Second.
And I do have some comments, Mayor.
Did someone second it? I can't hear anything.
We had a
Yes.
second from do we have a second from Mr. Arvanese, I believe?
Yes.
And I have comments, Mayor.
Okay, go ahead.
And Mayor, you're fading in and out a little bit, so maybe that's why you're not hearing us.
Grazel, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to point out that you're fading in and out a little bit, so maybe that's why you're not hearing some of the goings on. I just had a couple questions. I guess Mr. Quinn would answer them, but some commentary for the Township Committee too. This ordinance significantly increases the towing fees that we have previously been charging in Morris Township. I understand that we're not in line with current rates out there, but there were certain things that did stand out to me. First of all was there's an administrative fee for every tow. We all know on our bills that we get from cell phone companies and TV companies and whatever, I just hate administrative fees. And if there's any way to eliminate a blanket administrative fee and allow for charging for access to the yard, charging for filling out paperwork, I'd prefer us to go that route versus a blanket administrative fee. As one comment, I also had a question about the towing charge, and maybe Mr. Quinn could answer this, the mileage charge. So Mr. Quinn, there's a per mileage charge for something that doesn't.
I can't hear a thing.
You want to dial in?
The mileage charge does not apply to basic tolls, nor does the administrative fee. The mileage is if somebody's going to move from one location to the other, or we're dealing with commercial towing at a later time. But it does not appear, I mean, it is not for a basic tow service that we do. That is incorporated in the fee, as is there is no administrative fee for a basic tow for a passenger vehicle. The administrative fee is more for the processing of the information for insurance companies, or as you said, access to the yard to clean out the car, those kinds of things.
Right.
That is not a new fee. That fee has been in the ordinance previously. Some of these fees go back to 2010. Other ones go back to 2015.
Yeah, so with regard to the per mile fee, it read to me like if they were getting towed outside of Morris Township, that's when the per mile fee gets applied.
No, so that for a basic tow, if they're going to take it to someplace else, let's say they want the tow service to take it from their yard to a body shop or something like that, that is what the tow fee is. There's no tow fee for a basic tow in Morris Township with the 4 companies that we contract out with every several years. They only receive the basic tow fee for a passenger vehicle. Things change a little bit on the commercial side because of the additional work that is involved in it, but the basic mileage rate does not apply to a basic tow.
Okay, and I should have started off by just asking you to explain to the public what kind of situation would this ordinance kick in? Is it for an abandoned car? Or is it for somebody who has no AAA service, for example, and needs to get pulled off the highway? What kind of situations would this ordinance apply to?
This involves any police situation, such as a motor vehicle accident or a disabled motor vehicle or an abandoned vehicle on the street that the police will call. Requires the companies that are selected and approved by the Township Committee every 3 years to go through a very rigorous inspection by our police department to ensure they have all the proper equipment, that they have the proper insurance, and that their employees do not have any criminal histories. So we do those inspections, and then that's for approval every 3 years by the Township Committee. So these are these companies that are selected, and then they go on a rotating basis, and that's who the police department calls when they need tow trucks for, as I said, a motor vehicle accident, a disabled motor vehicle, or an abandoned vehicle. Certainly the police will also, if somebody has AAA or whatever for a disabled vehicle, many of these same tow companies are also AAA, so we'll just notify them on behalf of AAA or whatever tow service they have. A lot will also depend on the situation. Is if the vehicle's in the middle of the road or on the side of the road, kind of traffic issues are being caused, that kind of thing. But the requirements are for these tow companies to be immediately responsive to assist in opening up the roadways by the removal of the vehicles.
Mm-hmm. So in certain situations, it sounds like the car owner, if they're on the scene, would be able to call their own tow company. But if it's an urgent situation, they might not have that option. Is that?
That is the correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, as you know, like many people have AAA, but it does not cover a motor vehicle accident. So we have to bring somebody in to do that. But our police department gives all courtesy. So oftentimes people will ask for a specific tow company to come who they've done work with before. If it's not a hazard, then certainly that is granted by the police, and they make that notification to the tow company to come out. If the person who has the car is broken down, whoever does not have a preference, then we reach out to whoever the next tow company is on the on-call list.
Very good. And I also had a question about the cleanup fee. There's a $75 per hour cleanup fee. Who requests that? Is it the police that requests that a scene be cleaned up by that?
Also, they have to clean it up. So if they get there and there's an accident and we have glass on the roadway, or we have fluids such as oil or antifreeze on the roadway, they've got to put down the speedy dry, clean that up, and more importantly, get any debris or glass and that kind of thing off of the roadway.
Right, so if the situation is where a third-party towing company, I'll call them because they're outside of this agreement, comes in, but the roadway still needs to be cleaned up, how does that happen?
They would be required to have that cleanup done. They're going to come out and service.
Okay. Very good.
And anybody who responds to a motor vehicle accident as part of the towing process, they have to ensure that the road is cleaned up from any debris. And if there are any fluids from vehicles that the speedy drive is put down to absorb those fluids.
Mm-hmm. And is it the police that does a final inspection of the roadway before they allow the tow company to leave?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Quinn.
You're welcome.
That it?
That's it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I will say just, Mr. Quinn, I'm having extreme difficulty hearing. I'm missing probably 3/4 of what's being said. So I'll do my best to keep going here, but
Kathy, if I
need
may,
to call in. That's why.
Kathy, listen to the attorney.
Kathy, if I may, the problem is on your end,
Yeah,
and perhaps
it may
between
be.
now and in the next meeting, we should work on your internet connection because that's where the problem lies.
I will give you a portable Wi-Fi and see if that works for the next meeting. Maybe that will.
Okay. All right. In the time, we'll keep going and we'll see how it plays out here. I feel like I could lose contact.
Can you dial in with your phone?
Mayor, I would suggest that what you do is dial in and connect telephonically and abandon the video for the balance of the meeting, especially since we're done with the majority of the business now.
Well, she could keep the video on, but just talk through the phone.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so what number would I call to do that?
Mayor, I will call you.
Okay.
Mr. Carlson.
On my cell.
Your cell number? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And where do I turn off the audio on the computer or on the
Mute button, bottom left.
Well, she also has to turn down the computer volume or else there's going to be reverb through the phone.
Yes.
Turn down your computer volume as well as mute yourself.
Where's the volume?
Bottom right of your screen, you should see a little speaker.
No, you're on a MacBook. It's on your keyboard, top right.
Oh, that's right.
On my keyboard, top right.
There should be a little speaker symbol with buttons that show plus and minus or something like that.
You know, I can also mute her here.
Okay. I'm here.
Okay, I think we're good on that.
Sounds
Yeah.
to me like it's reverbing.
Yeah, you need to turn your computer volume off.
Yeah.
Kathy, you need to mute your cell phone.
Or somebody mute Jimi Hendrix, please.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like.
Mayor Wilson, we need a roll call for the introduction of that ordinance, please.
Yes. Why don't you go, my thought is why don't you go ahead and do that? And I will, I'm thinking maybe I should reboot, come back in.
But you're doing very well right now.
Yeah, it's fine. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Arvanites,
Yes.
Mr. Jarfi,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mr. Grizel,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
A point of technicality, Mayor.
Yes.
I don't think you read into the record the legal language after we passed the swim pool ordinance.
No, she did.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, she did.
Okay.
Let's
Just
not-
checking.
Let's not relive that moment in time.
Okay. So moving on, bid report. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you, Mayor. I have two bid reports to do. Both of these do with the sewer utility. The first one is a large one. This is the HVAC system for both Butterworth and the Woodland Sewer Treatment Plant. Bids were put out and taken in on June the 3rd. 12 contractors picked up the bids and 2 contractors submitted their bids on June 3rd. A review of the bids by our engineering department and our purchasing also found that the lowest responsible bidder was ACP of Fairfield, New Jersey, in the amount of $1,969,400. And it is recommended that the Township Committee award the contract to ACP in that dollar amount, and there is a accompanying resolution for your consideration. The second one also deals with the Butterworth Sewage Treatment Plant and structural repairs. Those bids were also received on June the 3rd. 12 bids went out and 7 bids came back. The lowest bidder came in at $214,000. The next bidder that came in was actually at $328,000. After the bids came in, we received a letter from the lowest bidder advising that they made some mathematical errors on their bid documents and forgot to include some numbers. And by law, they withdrew their bid within 5 days. That was also reviewed by Mr. Carlson. As we looked at it, and the amount of money we found is that all of the rest of the bids came in higher than our engineering estimate. So we are making a recommendation that all of the bids be rejected. We'll look at this and we're going to get this back out to bid to see if we can get some better prices for what we anticipate this project to be worth. So there is also a resolution for your consideration to reject all bids for the Butterworth Sewage Treatment Plant structural repairs. That will conclude the bid report now.
Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Next, we have resolutions. Mr. Carlson.
And Mr. Quinn, if you can pick up where you left off, this is probably a great opportunity for you to explain where we are with Resolution 132-20 before we vote the resolutions.
Okay. On 132-20, that is for our electric supply. We go out every couple of years. It's a reverse bid for that. We have done extremely well as we've gone through the process. We had another process today. Our previous company was MP2 Energy. MP2 Energy came back in today at the lowest bid for that. Sorry, just let me get you the rate.
Sorry to catch you off guard here, Mr. Quinn, but I assume you.
It came in at 0.7689 per kilowatt hour. The JCP&L rate is at 0.93. We're looking at a savings over that of approximately $83,000 a year. For that, $165,000 for the contract over the 2-year period. On this resolution that has been since modified is the recommendation to authorize the mayor and the clerk to enter into the contract. These are time sensitive, that the way the auctions work, that the contracts have to be signed within 24 hours. We were very pleased with the service that we got from MP2 Energy going back to when they were awarded the contract back in 2018. So it'll be a very easy transition, keeping them as our electric supplier for the next 2 years.
Sure, and if I can just briefly add before we move the resolutions that, you know, I work in a number of different communities. This is something that was rather new to me, and I had a conversation with Mr. Quinn about it. It seems to me that this is a process that all communities should be engaging in. Morris Township has been, you know, a leader in that regard, and should be commended for that. You know, a savings of $83,000. This is the reason why. This is amongst the reasons, I should say, why, you know, you enjoy year after year very low to 0% tax increases. this is very wise. So with that commentary, we have resolutions. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I also wanted to make a comment. I just noted on the agenda listed on the website, so publicly available, 132-20, as you were just reciting, actually doesn't list the name of the company or the amount. So for the record, can we list an accurate title for the record for 132-20, please?
Yeah, this is Mr. Grazel, an unusual resolution because we are, it's got to be done within 24 hours, so we didn't have the information until today. So I will state the resolutions. I will ask for any anybody that needs to sit any of these out, and I will ask Mr. Quinn to fill in the balance of 132-20. So,
Mr. Carlson, this is Amelia has already submitted that. We did that earlier today, and that was distributed to the Township Committee earlier today, the resolution with the name of the company and the per kilowatt hour, and that was sent out this afternoon.
Okay. And thank you, Mr. Quinn. The version I'm looking at, which is probably an earlier version, has some blanks, so I'll just ask for the sake of the public that you read that. But we have resolutions tonight, 117-20 through 132-20. Are there any of those that anybody needs to be recused of or want off the consent list?
Mr. Carlson? Mr.
Yeah.
Carlson, I think that 128-20 would probably be the only one that Committeeman Jorfi can't vote on. So I would like to make a motion now. We can get that one out of the way, that we approve 128-20.
And Mr. Carlson, we have an add-on.
Second.
Okay, so we're going to vote on 128-20 separate right now, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do we need a roll call for that, or all in favor?
It's money. We'll need a roll call for money.
Roll call. Madam Clerk, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes, we'll do. Mr. Arvanites.
Yes.
Mr. Jarfi.
I abstain.
Mr. Mancuso. Mr. Mancuso.
Yes.
Mr. Brazel.
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
So now I'm looking for a motion to approve resolutions 117-20 through
No, it's 112. It starts at 112.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Carlson, there's also an add-on for the one for...
Yep, got it. Okay, so 112-20. Got it. Through 132-20, excluding 128-20.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Carlson, we also have 133-20, which is for the agreement for SK Associates. That's the add-on from close.
So I apologize for printing and bringing home with me the last resolution the last agenda that was sent to me, but as amended by Administrator Quinn.
Okay, for clarity of the record, can we just do 112 through 131, and then let's do 132 and 133, please?
Sure. If that's what you're comfortable with, sure. Let's do 112-20 through 131-20 with the exclusion of 128-20.
Very good. So moved.
Second.
Okay, and before we vote on that, I do have one question. 122-20. My question is, was that refers to Brian Morgan's appointment to the Environmental Commission?
The ordinance attached has the name of Brian Morgan to fill alternate number 2 on the Environmental Commission, expiring at the end of this year.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, so we have on the table the vote on the resolutions 112-20 through 131 through
131-20, exclusive of
128.
There
Correct.
you go.
Okay, Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Yes. Mr. Arvanites.
Yes.
Mr. Jarfi.
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso.
Yes.
Mr. Pretzel,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Next, we have, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Quinn, resolutions 132-20 and 133-20.
That is correct, sir. 133 would be the add-on for with SK non-chemical associates.
Thank you. Need a motion to approve those.
I would make that motion.
Second.
Can we have, excuse me again, for clarity of the record, can we read in the title of 133-20? What is
Mr.
the
Quinn,
title?
can you help me with that, please?
Mr. Mayor, you have that in front of you, or I'll dig it up.
I have it.
It was in the closed session package.
Yes. Just a moment.
Oh, yes.
I'll get it.
Authorizing the execution of an agreement between SK Mount Kimball Associates with the address 520 US 22 East and the Township of Morris for an interim mutual cooperation agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That sounds correct.
Okay, so we are, that has been moved and seconded, and we'll take,
I'll move it. Yep.
okay, a second,
Second.
and we'll do a vote individually on this is 132-20 and 133-20, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Mr. Arvanites,
Yes.
Mr. Jarkey,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
Yes.
Mr. Pretzel,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you, committee members. I will turn the meeting back over to the municipal clerk.
Consent calendar received for the record as circulated.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Moving on, standing committee reports and commentary by the Township Committee. We'll combine those. And we'll begin with Committeeman Arvanites.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned in your opening remarks, on Monday, June 29th at 6:30 at the gazebo at Ginty, we will be doing the swearing-in ceremony for the Chief of the Department, Michael Nunn, the two new lieutenants, Brendan McCloskey and Stephen Hornine, and also for three new career firefighters, Melissa Alderton, Robert Keller, and Daniel Lovenberg, that you and I had the privilege of interviewing them, and we were very impressed and honored to offer their names as we did in a previous meeting. Also, it looks like we're on pace as we pass the amended swimming pool fees to open the pools for July 3rd. It will be at 50% capacity. I'm just going to summarize some of the items that were agreed upon. There will be no use of the diving boards or the slides. And based on the projections, we will have a significant deficit from running the pools this year because of the numbers. That's it for my committee reports right now. As
Mr.
far as
Arvanites, can I interrupt? What again is the date and time for the swearing in of the fire officials?
June 29th at 6:30.
And where?
The gazebo at Ginty Field.
Thank you.
Ginty Park, yeah. With regard, I have a couple of questions actually that I'd like to get some answers to. Mayor Wilson, it's come to my attention that you and our deputy mayor have gone to some private meetings with developers. Is that true?
No.
There's never been any meetings that the two of you or individually have gone to talk to developers about a property in town that developers are either looking at acquiring or have acquired?
No.
Okay.
We've had conversations with different people. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, it's been brought to my attention that developers that have either acquired property or looking to acquire property have met with either one or both of you privately to discuss what could or couldn't go on those properties.
Well, and let me ask, Mr. Arvanites, I'm not saying that happened. I doubt. I have no idea if it did or didn't. But what would be the problem with that? Should mayors not discuss? I mean, you were the mayor of Roseland. Should mayors just remain in the dark as to, what's going on in their towns, or should they talk with developers preliminarily?
Well, in my experience, I never spoke to a developer on my own without bringing either another council person, business administrator, or an attorney with me, because I never wanted to be in a position that I spoke to a developer on my own.
Sure, and I can tell you that my advice to any elected official would be to never speak to a developer one-on-one without another person in the room, and that's been my advice to people from all over the state. Next.
Right. So that concerned individuals have brought that to my attention, so that's why I'm asking the questions.
Repeat the question, please, because I think it's crazy. But repeat it again, please.
I wanted to know if there have been any private meetings with either one or both of the individuals that were mentioned with developers to discuss the possibility of certain properties that are either purchased or are to be purchased, as to what can or can't be put there, or what that would be supported. And part of the reason why I ask that too is that we on the committee are not. We don't know that that's happening, and why do one or two people get to do that without us knowing? What properties is it? How many meetings have there been? What was discussed? Again, were any professionals in attendance? And if we're talking about having transparent government, why are these types of meetings allegedly being done in secret?
Okay. So if I may, Mr. Arvanites, meetings between potential developers and people within the township government happen routinely. You know that as the former mayor of Roseland. So let me ask you this: is what you're asking for is an invite to each and every one of those meetings? Because that's easily done. If you would like to be part of those meetings, whether it be with the township planner or the township engineer or the mayor, you could, if your request is join any of those meetings, I doubt you would get much pushback, and you could probably join every one of them.
And I respect that, Mr. Carlson, but my question was, have these meetings taken place? And
well, you got your answer to that. You got an answer to that question too. Okay. So and if you're concerned about them, I'll make sure that you're copied on each and every one of these, and you can choose or not choose to join.
Are you aware of these meetings taking place?
I'm only aware of the meetings that I've been to, which are there have been conference calls with various developers that here, there, and everywhere, which is of course normal. That's the routine course of business.
Yes.
That developers will call the business administrator, that they'll call the planner, that they'll call yes, developers do from time to time inquire of things with the township.
I understand that. And again, I respect what you're saying, and I hear loud and clear what you're saying.
Well, where are you going? Tell me where you're going. Tell me where you're going, and let's just get there and cut it the quick here.
I just wanted to know, on the record, if private meetings had taken place without any professionals or anyone.
So if your question is whether Jeff Grazel or Kathy Wilson have been smoking cigars in a back room with developers, I assure you the answer is no.
I didn't say that.
You did, though. You did. But you did.
Okay. Why are you attacking me?
Why are you attacking others?
I'm not. I'm asking a question. And your position as our township attorney is not to defend everyone else on this committee.
No, it's to
Excuse me,
defend the
excuse
business of
me.
the township committee, which has been conducted at the highest of standards to
And
date.
I didn't say anybody did anything. I did not say anybody did anything wrong. I asked a question, I got an answer, and I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
Let's
Good.
move
Then
on.
be done. Done.
Are you completely done, Mr. Arvanites?
Yep. If your answer was no, then I do not have any other questions.
If you want
Thank
more,
you.
I'm here.
Mayor Wilson, I appreciate your answer. If your answer was no, I do not have any further questions. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Mr. Arvanites. Next, we have Mr. Committeeman Jorfi.
Thank you, Mayor. I will go through my standing committee reports first and then provide some additional commentary. The Standing Committee on Communications and IT met last week with Administrator Quinn to discuss our communication strategy for the remainder of the year, which has been which had to change drastically due to COVID. And I believe the township has done a great job with communicating with our residents with updates about COVID. We have the COVID site on our webpage. I encourage any residents to visit that if they have not yet. But we need to start planning to move forward. So we discussed having a fall newsletter again for the second year in a row to provide information to our residents about what is going on in the township and provide them updates. We decided to expand our social media platforms and presence. And thank you, Tim, and your staff, Virginia especially, for kickstarting our Instagram feed to fill a void in information on a different platform. And we talked about trying to make our municipal messenger more accessible on the township website. I'd also like to note that Liam Gallagher from the Economic Development Advisory Committee also helped out in the proposal to start up our Instagram page with the idea of supporting our local businesses that are reopening as we move into the next stage of recovery from COVID. And I encourage all residents to support these businesses, not only if they're doing takeout, but also if they're doing outdoor dining and if you're comfortable and not in the category where it could be harmful. For the Legislation Standing Committee, again, I want to thank the Township Committee members who provided input on the Pride Proclamation that we passed earlier this evening. And then for infrastructure, Committeeman Mancuso and I met with Administrator Quinn to talk about infrastructure projects within the township for the remainder of the year, and are happy to report that Convent Station, the renovations at Convent Station are moving forward. This is an advantageous time to do so while the facilities aren't being used as frequently as normal, so we won't be disrupting many commutes. Also, the township clerk sent out parking pass renewals for those who have had parking passes at Convent Station. For general commentary, again, I'd like to thank the health department and our health officials for all of their work day in and day out, weekends and nights for during the aftermath of COVID and as we move into the next phase. The contract tracing work that they've done, along as providing information to not only the Township Committee, the public, and the Board of Health has been integral for our township to communicate effectively to our residents. So thank you to them. And I'd like to just express to residents to please remain cautious when going out in public, wear a mask. New Jersey has, I think, in my opinion, done a tremendous job of preventing the continued spread. But we need to remain diligent as we move into the next phases as people start going out and about more frequently. With that, I would yield back the rest of my time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jorfi. Next, we have Mr. Mancuso.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have heard some rumblings that, some rumbling and rumors that we were thinking seriously of having July's Township Committee meeting at Town Hall open to the public with the ability to call in virtually. And that's the first I've heard of this. And I think that's one thing that we should be working on very hard, that all of the 5 members, of course we can't meet more than 2, But all of the 5 members, if there's some thought process in that way, that we should all be included in that thought process. I'm very strongly and strenuously opposed to this endeavor, because I think we're still at risk, as I said at the Board of Health meeting, for spread of COVID-19, as witnessed by 6 new cases in the township this week. The crisis is not over, as you can imagine, with increased cases arising around the country, and especially in China and Japan over the past few days. Who are vulnerable? Those people who are vulnerable will attempt to be at meetings, whether they are township committee meetings, planning board meetings, or board of adjustment. As you may imagine, the possibility of a new phase of this virus is potentially high, and we should have a very, very strong responsibility to protect our fellow citizens as well as our own families over this present risk. Similarly, we should be very much indisposed to pursuing the Abbey restoration for July 21st until we see how the land lays and how the virus lays and what's happening at that particular time. I think that has to be thought of very, very carefully. There are hundreds of people who wish to participate in this meeting, and we endanger all of us if we pursue this endeavor, especially those of us who are 65 and over and are in danger. So I'm very concerned about that. If in this meeting, we endanger all of us if we pursue this endeavor. And I think it's also wrong to limit the number of people allowed in the building, as all should be heard. And certainly we don't want to have a lottery, or worse, holding meetings virtually, or a combination of both. We have spent much time over the last 10 or 12 weeks in virtual isolation, many of us, to protect their families and the people who live with them. This has not been easy, and I can imagine many of you have gone through similar situations. Wasting all this time, effort, and caring to have meetings that can be postponed, which is the Abbey, while the rest can be done virtually. I would ask all concerned citizens to express their feelings about this in any way they feel fit. If this is more about our people than it is about development. And that's my statement, and that's what I have for tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mancuso. In regard to your point about, I believe I made the comment about perhaps holding our July meeting in person. There has been no discussion of that. It's just the guidelines are ever shifting, and it has occurred to me that the guidelines now allow currently up to 50 people with social distancing in an indoor setting. And at a typical township committee meeting, that would be sufficient to allow indoor participation in our meeting room for a regular township committee meeting. There has been no discussion of it elsewhere. And if you would like to discuss it now, I'm happy to do that. You've made your views clear. And if there's anyone else on the township committee who would like to weigh in on that question, I'd be happy to hear what your comments are.
The interesting thing is the numbers that are made up and are given to us started out with 10, they went to 25, they've gone to 50. I'm not quite sure if there is really, if these are not just specious comments and remarks, not by us, but by the powers who are speaking to us. I don't know what the rules are. I mean, should it be 52 or 67? So I'm just very, very concerned that we are not taking the recurrence of this thing, the possibility of it, as serious as we should. When I say we, I mean us as a general group. You know, I think we should really discuss, and maybe we should do it offline, as to what the best procedure is as far as.
Well, I'm just responding to your comment, Mr. Mancuso, about the need for discussion, and I agree with that. And the only time we have to discuss matters like this when we're all present at the same time is right now. So,
can I suggest, though, I would love to have a discussion with Mr. Mancuso offline, just as to, you know, what's allowed, what's not allowed, and it's all very confusing. It's confusing to me.
Well, I will say there are the guidelines coming out from the state, and I admit they're confusing and they're shifting, and the pool guidelines are a great example. They came out, they got retracted. So, but the number of people guideline on indoor settings, and Mr. Quinn, perhaps you want to weigh in on this. It is currently at 50.
Yes, that is correct. That was raised by the governor last week from 10 to 50 for any indoor gathering.
So currently, according to state guidelines, 50 people are allowed to meet for a gathering indoors, practicing social distancing and wearing masks. My personal opinion is that we can do that, and if there are, I very much respect that some people may not want to attend, and that's fine. But I've received communication from residents who wish to meet in person, and it seems to me that the state guidelines are the parameters that we are operating under right now. So I personally would be okay, assuming the guidelines stay the same, which there's no guarantee of that, but if they do, I would entertain the idea of meeting in person again.
But Kathy, and I agree with what you're saying in part. What I'm concerned about is when, as and if the Abbey meeting takes place, there's going to be 200 people.
Yes, absolutely. The Abbey is a different topic. The Abbey is different than the Township Committee meetings because a lot more people are anticipated.
May I interject, because I think that there's a simple solution that solves everybody's concerns, and that's and I do think that this is going to be the model going forward now that we've done this. I think we should have an in-person meeting with, of course, appropriate restrictions, et cetera, but also make online participation available. And this way, both members of the board as well as members of the public can either come to the public meeting and observe whatever restrictions are in place at that time, or stay home and participate remotely.
Yes, and with regard to the Abbey, we are anticipating well over 50 people, which is what can reasonably be accommodated at our meeting room. So in order to accommodate more people than that, we would need a larger venue.
Sure. But you know, I would urge you to pump the brakes a little bit here, because I think that the new model is going to be developed statewide in the next 3 months. You know, my one comment during COVID that's been consistent is whatever concern that we have on Monday seems to be answered by Tuesday. We'll spend all Monday worrying about something, and Tuesday the answer comes out. So, you know, I would advise everyone to just cool their jets in this regard, because I think that the answer will present itself within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. And I think your comment about just stepping on the brakes a little bit is a very, very good, concise way to sum it up, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else have any comments about the thought of potentially holding our meetings in person?
Mayor, I would just agree with Committeeman Mancuso and his concerns, and I think we all want to make sure and ensure we have a safe environment for our meetings, whether it's our regular, normal monthly meetings or the special meeting for the Abbey. which at this rate, there's no way we can hold it at town hall. It'll have to be at an outside venue or at a larger facility. But let me say, as moving forward for normal business, Zoom calls, in my opinion, are the norm. If we are in town hall on the dais together, we're still going to have simulcasts through a video conference.
Yes.
And I think that's just going to be the way of the land for the next few years, and we need to continue to work to improve our abilities to do that. But again, I agree with Mr. Mancuso, and I think we're just going to have to work through it to figure out what is best for the residents in regards to the Abbey, and what is best for us to be able to proceed with normal business.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to echo what Mark, Committeeman Jorfi just said with regard to Scott's comment on pumping the brakes. I couldn't agree more. Also with Peter's comments, just because we have 50 people or 52 people or 48 people doesn't mean that the virus can't be around us. There's been studies now that show that the masks don't work as well as some thought they did. So we're still increasing our chances of somebody getting the virus. To the extent that we can minimize that, as was mentioned earlier by Scott again, which was a great comment, that we're the leaders in the forefront of certain things. We should be in the forefront of this, even though there might be guidance that says we can do up to a certain number. We should make our own decision as to what we feel is best for our residents at that time, and for us, and for our employees and staff as well, and professionals. So the pumping the brakes, that was probably the best comment of the evening. So thank you, Scott, for that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank
John,
you.
and John, sorry if we had words tonight, but thank you for your kind comments. I'm here for you when you need me.
Thank you. And I do have one question for all of you. At what point, I know we're talking about putting on the brakes, but I would like to see us make a decision, like not save it till the last minute. Let's try to make it at least a few days ahead of time so we can let people know. I think that would be
reasonable.
beneficial.
Yep.
All right, so we'll agree to that and move on. Was that it, Mr. Mancuso? You've completed your remarks?
I have, ma'am, and thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Grayzel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to apologize to the residents for the technical glitches tonight. We will continue to work out these glitches when we hold our meetings online, but thank you for your patience as we continue trying to move forward the business of the township in the circumstances that we're in. They're not perfect, but we have to do what we have to do with these monthly meetings. For my committee reports, police department, today was the last day on the job for Sergeant Jason Lawler, who is retired now from our police department. Sergeant Lawler served our community for 25 years, and we wish him well in his retirement. The standing committee responsible for oversight of the police department, which is myself and Mr. Mancuso, met last week with the police chief and two of our captains to review the police policies, protocols, trainings, values, and so much more. All in light of the things we've been seeing around our country and people questioning our police department. The standing committee wanted to just catch up with them. I think I speak for both of us that we have the utmost confidence in our police department, and they really do a great job. To that point, I wanted to remind the public of the accreditation ceremony we held last year, and the honor our department received for holding the highest standards for policing in the state of New Jersey. In order to receive that accreditation that we got last year, you have to uphold very high standards. And what we're going to do is, I'm hopeful the municipality will be providing residents with some kind of written overview of the police department's practices and protocols and a review of that accreditation so that everybody understands the high level that our local police department operates at and the confidence that everybody should have in them. In the interim, I recommend that the public review the large amount of information that exists on the police department's webpage on our website. And if you go to morristwp.com, you click on the department's icon and then click on the police department, you will find a very large amount of information that you can explore. Next on shared services, I've mentioned the last couple of meetings about the joint services project that we've embarked on with the towns of Morristown, Morris Plains, and Madison. And I told you we were collecting data to hand over to the Department of Community Affairs about that compares the efficiency of which all 4 of our municipalities do various DPW services. And that data has now been transmitted by all 4 towns to DCA, and DCA is going to be taking a look at it and processing it and getting it back to us. So again, I'm very pleased that this effort is moving forward on this shared services project. As for my personal remarks, I too want to thank the health department. Prior to the meeting tonight, we had a Board of Health meeting. And at that Board of Health meeting, we were informed about how much work the municipality has put into contact tracing. Everybody's heard about how important that's going to be going forward, that when somebody gets sick, you inform all the people that you've been in contact with so they might know if they've been exposed. Our health department actually hired some part-time workers to do contact tracing in addition to the employees that we have on hand. And we learned that they actually spent several weekends doing contact tracing in order to keep the community safe. So I wanted to thank them for all their hard work, for working overtime, and for what they do behind the scenes to protect the community that we might not see on an everyday basis. A number of people have asked me about the town hosting a drive-in movie. And unfortunately, we don't have a big enough space enough to hold cars in a proper configuration to do that. But I did want to let everybody know that there is an outdoor concert coming up next week. The Morristown Performing Arts Center, in partnership with the Morris County Park Commission, is presenting a drive-in concert featuring John Ginty at Foster Fields. And that's located in Morris Township. It's going to be held June 25th at 6:30. Tickets are a little pricey at $100, but it really is going to support the Performing Arts Center and keeping them afloat. So I encourage everybody to try to go. You have to buy the tickets in advance because they won't be selling any at the gate. I lastly want to remind the public to remain vigilant. We had discussions earlier about COVID and it's still out there. We haven't, sorry. As I've driven through town, I've actually seen numerous people walking around without masks. And this is a concern of me because we all need to remain vigilant in our health protections of both wearing masks and washing our hands and all the other things that we've been taught already. So I just wanted to remind residents that when they wear a mask, they not only protect themselves, but they protect others. And we're all in this together. We don't want it to get worse. We don't want to go back into a lockdown. So please, I encourage everybody when you're out in public to wear a mask, even if you're 6 feet away from somebody. It doesn't hurt to have a mask on. And then related to COVID also, I heard today on the radio someone that gave me a different perspective on the term social distancing that I wanted to share with the public. And it's really what we're looking for is physical distancing. And the term social distancing is a misnomer in a lot of respects. So we want to keep 6 feet away physically from people. But I do want to encourage our residents not to be socially distant from each other, to reach out to their neighbors and their friends, pick up the phone call, see how everybody's doing. If you have an elderly neighbor, please reach out to them, see if you can do anything for them, if they need any shopping done. Again, we're all in this together, and let's support each other, and we'll get through it together. But again, we need each other's help to keep each other healthy. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Graysell. On my standing committee, Energy, Environment, and Sustainability, the Environmental Commission did meet remotely for the first time since March last week. And there was basically rebooting. They have many issues that they're working on and kind of rebooting where they left off. A couple of things I wanted to highlight. One of their proposals, they have many different projects they're working on, and one of their proposals, which you should have seen in your packets, was a proposal to add associate members to help with some of the projects that they're working on. So I would ask that you read the proposal that Mr. Kenny has provided, and that we discuss that. If anyone has read it and has any comments on it right now, I would certainly take those comments. I myself think it's a wonderful idea, and I hope we will move in that direction. I wanted to highlight something that the environmental chair, Mr. Kenny, is coordinating, is a proposal on stormwater management rules for our boards, for the Environmental Commission and our land use boards. Stormwater management is a very important part of the work that goes into making land use decisions, and there's a lot of information there, and there's some really good training that ANJEC has worked with Rutgers to provide, and we're hoping to offer that pretty soon, I would say within the next month or so. I also wanted to thank Alex Ambrose for her service on the Environmental Commission. Alex has recently moved and so is resigning from the Environmental Commission, and I'd like to welcome on board Brian Morgan, and who he did attend last week and will be attending now as an official member at the next meeting. Let's see here, the Transportation Advisory Committee did not meet in June and will be resuming in July, to be continued, to be determined whether it will be in person or remotely. We shall see. I also wanted to thank Mr. Jorfi for working with Liam Gallagher, the vice chair of our EDAC committee, to come up with the idea for highlighting our small business reopenings and expanding our presence on social media and on Instagram. I think that's a really great idea, and I thank you for working together and making that happen. I'm glad that we passed the Pride Proclamation. I think that's a great thing for our community. And I did want to comment briefly on the George Floyd situation. That's been on my mind a lot for the last couple of weeks. I see that as a turning point in our country's history, and it raises a lot of issues that I think are important for us to work with in our own community. The issues are numerous, they're complex, they're emotional, and there's a lot of depth here. I encourage anyone from the public who hasn't done so yet to read our statement of June 8th. And a particularly important goal to me, let us stand together both as a community and a nation to ensure that the legacy of George Floyd and others is to strengthen our unity, build our mutual understanding and respect, and produce actions that lead to positive and enduring change for all. We also stated in our statement that we recognize that words must be followed by actions, and that we are committed to both. This is a unique situation. I see it as a community issue. Our typical way of working with issues is through our standing committee structure. I see this as a bigger community issue that goes beyond just one single standing committee. I would like to see our efforts coming from the entire township committee. And I've talked with Mr. Mancuso as head of the police standing committee, and myself as mayor and a representative of the communications standing committee, that will be working together to develop our plan of action going forward. We have a lot of ideas on the table. It's still in the formative stage. And I do encourage anyone from the public who's interested and has contributions. I've heard from several people. I've been in communication with several people. I'm personally doing outreach to many different individuals and groups. And I would like to see us move forward with a variety of actions. So I am struck by a quote that I came across by Martin Luther King. People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. They have not communicated with each other because they are separated. So a big part of what I see us working on is bringing together individuals and groups who, so that communication, direct communication, dialogue, and sharing can take place with the goal of building and expanding mutual understanding and respect. And with that, we will move on. I will say also, I want to apologize for the technical problems we've had here, and which I continue to experience. I am unable to see the screen. So Mr. Daly, I would ask on the public comment portion, I am unable to see the screen that has the participants' names. So I would ask that you call on people who are raising their hand, and I would ask that the members of the public who wish to speak say their name and their address, and please keep your comments to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Mayor, may I say one thing, please?
Sure.
It has to do with Deputy Mayor Grazel's comment regarding the drive-in movie, which I think that's a great idea. And maybe we can see if we can configure it in some way at our Convent Station parking lot. So just a thought.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
We'll throw it out there. Good idea. All right. Mr. Daly, we are now open for public comment and inquiry, and I would ask Mr. Daly if you could, if anyone has raised their hand.
Yeah, we have the person from earlier that has also been waiting with their hand up from before. Emkos?
It's Anacostia.
Okay. She's been on earlier, and I'm going to unmute her, and she's now unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Is this Ann?
Yes, it is. Hi, Mayor Wilson and Township Committee. Thanks very much. And Mr. Mancuso, thank you for your comment on the importance, and everyone has made, as far as keeping safe and distant. But I have to, Mr. Carlson, I understand where you're coming from as far as Zoom and everything else, but the May meeting was, the first half hour was almost a circus as far as connecting people. I myself, my internet in this house is optimum. My husband has been working from home, and we've had to move the computer twice because it's been so bad. And tonight I got dropped 3 times waiting to speak. So as much as I understand this could be the new norm, for a regular variance or request of a hearing for something in a backyard or a house or an air conditioning, that might be different. But in something as regarding to the Abbey, I think that should be postponed until everyone can be there. And we don't know. You're absolutely right. We won't know what's going on until, if this could circle back around. It may be a full year before we have to wait and see if it does come back around. But again, the Abbey, excuse me, but the Abbey itself, the Abbey itself is huge. I mean, it's in our neighborhood. If there was something else, like matter of fact, last year with the Madison Hotel, that's not something that can be done by Zoom, because I mean, of course it can, but the mayor herself had an issue tonight. Remo Caputo couldn't raise his hand to speak. The mayor's computer has been out of whack. And yes, there'll be flukes, and we're still new at this. But I sent an email this earlier before the meeting, probably right before the meeting, and I seriously request that, or you consider that we postpone anything on the Abbey. I know maybe things will change by July. I think we all know it probably won't, not to the extent we need. That was my one question. And just to confirm what Remo Caputo had mentioned about the notices of 200 feet and further, especially for those condos or townhouses on Old Turnpike, because they will be affected by the valet parking at 310 Punch Bowl. So I was wondering if we could confirm that they will receive notices when the next hearing will be held.
I can confirm that.
Listen. If I may, right on with all your comments. As a primarily a land use lawyer, there is nothing I want to see more than public participation in land use processes. This is presenting us a really, really weird situation where, government cannot shut down forever. And at some point, we're going to need to figure out how to go on. Fortunately, this is not today, but at some point, we're going to need to figure out how to proceed on these things. And I hope that, COVID goes away and we can get back to having public hearings that we all know and love, but we're not there yet. So, let's just press pause until we know a little more.
Yes, but you're saying, all I'm asking, or I'm you're saying press pause. I mean, if I don't know if you were at the meeting for the Madison Hotel, but there were over 100 people that wanted to and did attend that meeting. And that will be the same here. Even if you go with a closed or a Zoom meeting and you allow up to 50 people, or if you have to do social distancing, you're not going to be able to even fit a full 50 people in that room. So you will have people outside in the parking lot. That's how serious people are taking this.
And my sincere hope is that we learn how to do those meetings in a public fashion. I don't know what that looks like. It's going to look like something different than we're used to experiencing, but I look forward to learning what that looks like, or perhaps even helping develop what that looks like.
Would it ever be thought to be done like on Ginty Field, where you have the movies, or at, say, Menon Arena?
No. Listen, nothing is off the table right now. Let me say that.
Okay.
As far as the notices, the people within 200 feet are definitely sent the notices. And I believe that, I'm not sure if the people on Old Turnpike are within the 200-foot parameter, but I think that we can send that notice to them as well.
Okay.
And we will, it's very important to me personally that the public is notified as to what the date is, or if there's a change in the date, sufficiently ahead of time, that there's time to plan, to attend, to be prepared and all that. So I know all of these things are very difficult in this current environment, but that is an important consideration to me.
Okay, well, they don't, the condos and townhouses, just one last thing, they don't have mailboxes on their homes. They have keyed mailboxes. So we were not able to leave any information for them.
Okay.
Mrs. Costiat?
Very much.
Mrs. Costiat, are you still on? We just need your address for the record, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 6 Crescent Drive,
Thank you, ma'am.
Township. Yep. Sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Daly, can you call on the next person, please?
Heidi Ross?
Heidi?
Take a moment, shut them up.
Okay, I'm here.
Heidi?
Okay, one second.
She muted herself. Wait a minute. What's going on here?
I heard her the first time.
Yeah, and then she muted herself.
Can I be heard now?
Yes.
Can hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Please say your address for the record.
Certainly, I'm Heidi Ross, 6 Deegan Lane.
Thank you. Go ahead, Heidi.
I'm going to speak very quickly. Jeff Grazel, I'd like to thank you for your recent email to the public about your concerns about social justice. I really appreciate that. I'd like to talk to you, Jeff Grazel, sidebar about the shared services, and I think the public in general would like more information on contact tracing. If you could possibly define it and include some kind of description on how it works. I think the public would appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a great idea for a public communication, Mr. Jorfi, for the communications group, explaining what contact tracing is. There's a lot of information on the State Department of Health website that you can from.
Sure, but I mean in terms of these workers that are hired and what they engage in and so forth, that kind of thing as well.
Very good.
Yeah, you're welcome. So I think I'll just contact you separately on the shared services idea. And also I wanted to mention in your communication about voting, I think from having several discussions with other residents, people are unclear about the public voting, casting their votes. And in that, I mean that since there will be polling of a limited capacity to a limited number of the public at the municipal building on the 15th or the 7th or whatever the date is.
It's basically limited to people with disabilities on the.
Yes, but I think I want to just make clear what my understanding is in the public's confusion, that they will be able to take their vote by mail ballot to the municipality and drop it off on election day. Yeah. And I think that it should be made 100% or 150% clear to the public that if they are not interested in mailing their ballots because people have concerns about hand canceling, and stamping of mail, whether it's actually stamped, it being counted and all that. And a lot of talk about delaying that the mail seems slower and this and that. People might be interested in delivering their ballots. If they want to deliver their ballot, they must drop it off at 10 Court Street. There will be an official ballot box located there where they can drop their vote by mail ballot in person into a box where it will be collected by the Board of Elections.
Yes, that's a good point.
And I think that
to
should
my
be
knowledge,
very
that box,
clear.
To my knowledge, and Mr. Quinn can perhaps correct me if I'm wrong, I do not believe there is a box at our municipal center.
There is not. I checked with the Board of Elections. There will not be a drop box to drop, and nor will any ballot workers, whoever's going to be there, be able to accept those ballots.
Correct.
At the municipal building. They must be dropped at 10 Court Street.
Yeah.
And there are only 4 other locations in the county where vote by mail ballots can be dropped.
Yes.
They will not be accepted at polling places.
That's correct.
So if that could be made extremely clear in a communication of at least once, maybe twice before the election,
Yes.
I think that would be good.
Good idea. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you, Heidi.
Yep. I appreciate Mr. Mancuso's comments regarding health. And on the subject of public meetings and the whole thing with the Abbey and whatever, I would strongly implore the attorney to define what a comment that he make, and it doesn't have to be tonight, but that he's concerned about the rights of property owners, because I know that under the redevelopment law, there are some kinds of guidelines, I'm sure. I don't know that legislation or zoning or whatever it's called exactly as well as I might, but that because that thing is in play, that plan is in play and waiting to be accepted, that the township committee may be under some constraints to behave in some kind of timely manner in order to address that redevelopment plan. I think a lot of the concern regarding the timing of this public meeting regarding the Abbey is in place, and the anxiety continues because of the concern of what is planned to subsequently happen after the public meeting, and that would be for the committee to vote on the ordinance. So if the public meeting can't be held and the ordinance, I think the conversation needs to be extended, because the township committee should make it very clear what kind of restrictions they're under in terms of time frames to be responsible to the developer / owner, Mr. Maioli and New York City Skyline Realty, and that in versus the public, who are also property owners, both adjacent to and not adjacent to the property in question. So that when Mr. Carlson reviews and you guys sit around and try to figure out how this is all going to work out, that you seriously consider the rights of not only the developer, but the rights of the other people whose rights may fall into different, kind of camps, in terms of how you need to address them. And that all of that be seriously considered, because I think that's my hunch is that's where the anxiety comes into play. The public, you've agreed to vote subsequent to the public hearing on the ordinance so that you have time to digest the comments. But you also have to commit to not voting, never mind the public hearing, that you will not vote until the public is heard in a fashion that is agreeable to all the concerned parties.
And Mrs. Ross,
yes,
thank you so much for your concern and your comments, and that sounds trivial. I apologize. I mean it sincerely. That you've been here with us for 2 hours now to make yourself clear. Let me tell you, without getting into anything that's attorney-client privileged or maybe legal in nature, let me tell you that the members of your township committee are very, very concerned about this matter. They are not treating it as routine business. They're looking into it, and they are they are very concerned that the process here be worthy of the results.
I'm pleased to hear that. Very pleased, and I'm sure
that's as much as I can share, but that much I can tell you.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that if anybody else that has called in that is concerned about the Abbey is also pleased to hear that. But I really do think that is the matter. The people who are trying to ascertain what this development might mean to them need the time, to be heard. But then, the fact that because it's so problematic with COVID and the technology and the number of people that you might be expecting and all of those considerate the health issues, et cetera, that you also commit not to voting, moving forward with the ordinance without making sure that this is clear, and that, understandably also needs to take into consideration any kind of restrictions that your activity has based on your obligations to the redevelopment process.
If
and I don't think anybody's clear on what that is. I mean, I don't think
sure. And I'm glad you acknowledge that. If you're concerned that this thing, as a result of COVID is just going to fly under the radar and accidentally happen because of it, I can tell you that, the members of your township committee are well concerned of that as well. That said, the process may be different than the process that we've used for the prior 40 years that we've had the municipal land use law. Mm-hmm. So we'll make sure it's a fair process, but it may be slightly different.
Nothing is going to come in under the radar. Heidi. I
Right.
can promise you that.
Okay, I think the public is
We have the
reassured with that.
concerns of the residents very much at heart. I assure you, we are doing the best we can with the circumstances we have here.
That's great, because, you know, my feeling is that, you know, there's always a lot of kickback on these matters from residents who are immediately affected, as
Yes, of course.
of course.
I
right?
will say we do have to move on.
Right,
so-
but I would like to just add one comment that the Abbey development affects the entire town,
Yes.
you know, because it is
It does.
moving the Madison Avenue corridor into a new phase, a phase of restaurant and retail development that affects not just the adjacent properties, but the town's purpose. It's alignment with the master plan, and the effect of that course ongoing, and the effect of, you know, of that in many
We
different
agree. It's
aspects.
very important. And I assure you, we are, you know, looking to do everything we can to ensure that the participation of the residents is complete and acceptable to all. We are really working hard to do that. So we do need to move on, and I thank you for your comments, Heidi. And I'd ask Mr. Daly if you could call on whoever is next on the list.
Yeah, next is George Quillen.
George Quillen? Okay.
Coming up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Please state your address for the record, George.
My address is 7 Bishop Court.
Thank you.
And
Try to limit your comments to 5 minutes.
okay,
Thank you.
I had one question and I had one comment. My question is about the resolution that was introduced or that was added to the agenda after the agenda was published to the public, 133-20. Could the Township Committee members or Mr. Quinn give a summary of what that resolution is about?
I can do that, sir. That is in reference to an agreement that deals with declaratory judgment litigation for a property in Harding Township that borders Morris Township, for them to be able to connect into the Morris Township sewer system that we did. And by doing that, they will only have access off of the corporate office park off Mount Campbell Avenue. And most importantly, the agreement then prohibits them from access to the site through Morris Township off of Frederick Place. But it's us working with them so they can get their necessary approvals, the wastewater management plan that is required by DEP, so they can build their development to be compliant with their low and affordable housing obligation.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could add, that project still has to go before that project still has to go before the Harding Planning Board, and after it goes to the Harding Planning Board, the circulation plan for accessing that will come before the Morris Township Planning Board. So the public will have a chance to take a look at it.
And Mr. Quinn, you mentioned declaratory judgment. Was there a court to which either Morris Township or Harding Township went for a declaratory judgment?
It was Harding Township, sir.
And
Mr. Quillen, every town has had to go through this process for affordable housing and get a judgment on how many affordable housing units are going to be required of the municipality. So when it's referred to a declaratory judgment, it's just the judgment that the court has given about how many units are required to go into your community. And as part of that judgment, it usually states where those units are going to go. So we've discussed that before for Morris Township, and this is part of the settlement for Harding.
Right.
Okay, thank you. My comment is about the nature of Zoom meetings, and I don't mean to repeat things that other members of the public have said. I know there's frustration out there. I myself like Zoom pretty well, and I think that for you to run your meetings using Zoom to lower the risk to the public and to yourselves of trying to have an in-person meeting is going to be a good idea potentially for quite a long time to come. So I hope that the frustrations begin to die down as people get more accustomed to Zoom. I do have a request for you to consider, though, which is the nature of the type of Zoom meeting that you have organized for township committee meetings is not that conducive to a public meeting, in my opinion. It seems to be a webinar format rather than a meeting format. And in that format, the meeting lacks what I think is an essential feature of a public meeting, which is that the participants, the participating members of the public, are aware of each other's presence and have an opportunity to interact with one another. So I, as a member of the public, and I don't know whether you're able to see this as members of the Township Committee, but I, as a member of the public, can see only the members of the Township Committee and the meeting room, Mr. Quinn, Mr. Daly, and the Township Attorney. I can't see and I'm not aware of the presence of any members of the public. I have no way of knowing who they are unless they decide to speak, and I have no way of communicating with them. So the Zoom meeting format is much superior to the Zoom webinar format in my opinion, for this type of meeting. And I urge you to consider that again. I know that there are some security issues with it that may need to be addressed, but I think that they are addressable, and you should be able to get comfortable with a meeting format. So that was my.
So noted. We will consider that. Is that it, Mr. Quillen?
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Daly, is there anyone else?
Yeah, James O'Reilly.
Okay. Mr. O'Reilly?
There, I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
50 Independence Way.
Thank you.
I appreciate Ann's comments. I prefer the online format because I just don't want people to run the risk. I mean, even if the state says 50, I'm not entirely comfortable with those numbers. I like, if you're going to hold a physical meeting, I do like the idea that there should also be an online option that people can attend online. I did like that. I have two questions. Oh, let's see. Right. One, do the public meeting laws affect the holding of meetings online? What can be done for people who don't have the technical capacity for to view an online meeting? And any development notices, could Liberty Greens be notified of any developments on Madison Avenue? That's it.
Okay, so as far as, are you, was your first question?
Mayor, do you want me to do you want me to address the legal questions?
Sure, go ahead.
Sure. Can we go through those one by one again, Mr. Riley? O'Reilly, I'm sorry, there were several.
Oh, okay.
Let me start with your last, which is, can all of the residents of Madison Avenue be notified of a development
Residents
application?
of Liberty Greens.
The law requires that anyone within 200 feet of a development be notified, and the municipality is unable to change that.
But it doesn't require you not to notify people beyond 200 feet, does it?
Well, sure, but I can't imagine that a developer would without the requirement. And, you know, unfortunately, municipalities can't decide that it should be 300 feet or 400 feet, as much as a lot of those would prefer that it does.
Mm-hmm.
And just as an aside, there are a lot of movements afoot to change the law on that point. We'll see what happens in the next year to 2 years.
We ourselves have submitted a suggestion to that effect.
Yes.
We have submitted a resolution suggesting the amendment of the municipal land use law to extend the 10-day notification period to 21 days.
That's good.
It's
also-
clear that 10 days is not enough, but that is the law, and it's state law, and it governs our local practices.
I was thinking of the distance too, but go ahead.
Mr. O'Reilly, can you remind me of your other questions? I'm
let's
glad
see.
to answer them.
The other parts of the question were, does the public meeting law affect, how does the public meeting law affect the ability to hold online meetings? And do you want me to give you the other question now or wait till?
Well, no. Let's talk about that one.
Okay.
You know, the public meeting law has been amended by executive order. Now, I invite you or any other member of the state to challenge whether or not that's legal. I'm not going to address that here. But presently, we are allowed to have public meetings by virtue of online or virtual meetings, but we are limited to what can be done to some degree, and we are also required to provide certain notice. So,
Okay, the third question. What can be done for people who don't have the technical capacity to view online meetings?
To be determined. That's the million-dollar question, Mr. O'Reilly. You know, which has come up time and time again when we're trying to figure out, like, while we're doing this, you know, what of those folks that don't have the technology? I'll tell you what the other argument is. I subscribe to neither of them, but the other argument is, what about the people that can't make a public meeting at town hall at 8 o'clock because they work or they have kids or any of these things, but now they can make them because they can get on their phone while they're at work and attend the meeting. So there's a lot of considerations there.
Thank you for your answers.
You're welcome.
Night.
That's all I know of the
O'Reilly.
I always have $1 million questions, but I never get $1 million.
I'll give you. I'm glad to give you a $1 answer, though.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Mr. Daly, is there anyone else?
No.
Okay, with that,
I move that we close the public portion.
thank you. Second, all in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Consideration of monthly reports.
That's circulated.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And finally, claims for payment. We will pay our bills, $8,061,169.75.
I'll move that.
Thank
Second.
you. Second?
We need a roll call.
I know. I didn't hear a second.
I did. Second, Peter.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, a roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Arvanites,
Yes.
Mr. Jorfi,
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso,
In honor of Mr. Pat Highland's birthday, reluctantly, yes.
Mr. Grizel,
Yes.
Mayor Wilson.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Motion to adjourn, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We are adjourned.
Everyone.
Our next meeting to reconvene July 15th at 7 p.m.
And
Thank
in
you,
the absence
everybody.
of my wife and kids, I will say this is the first public meeting that I attended while caring for our guinea pig Pretzel.
Okay.
Boy.
She's here and she's happy.
Okay, good. We're happy to hear that.
It's her first public meeting, so she did well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank
Good night,
you.
everybody.
Yes.
Good night, all.
Have a good
Good night.
evening.
Bye, goodbye.
Right.